Beautiful, beautiful girls.
Very bad.
Lia, L-I-E-A. Kalau jalan nggak? Cuma. Berapa bu? Ada luang. Luang nang lu bang Bisa ini banyak siapa?
Ay, kecena dia. Kecena juga.
Enggak bisa lagi.
Santuna.
Mujur. Jadi, mangga dulu me cowok.
Iya, pilih kalian. Jitan dan kalian ke sini.
Gue surna lu. Datang hari udah jual. Let's go. Ana surma. Let's go.
Go ah.
Mana akan
Yes, I think this problem of water is not something new. Whereas as a community leader, we have discussed this issue with unit management to open the way, runway of water behind the pen, so that the water can flow out. So there is no any response from unit management. So now the people are now in a very big problem. As we have seen, the people are connected. We have seen a lot of children are moving. So I think for you
are already contaminated with that water. What we want non-organization and union movement to come and to tell the people, as I said before, to open the way out so that the water can flow out.
Look it.
Aduh dia.
In Bentiu is this population of 30 to 40,000 people that's displaced in an area that's really not fit for human habitation. This is in the middle of the largest grass swamp in the world, and in fact it's really just not a place where people should be having to live. They've had to seek security, and the UN has done a decent job of providing security to people, and thank goodness for the Mongolian battalion, which is doing an amazing job providing people with protection from the violence and the horrible events that they've undergone and what they fear. Now the problem is this population is actually living in absolutely horrific conditions. This is no place for human beings to live, and certainly not children. So the issue is mortality. This population is dying. And most of the mortality, or a large part of the mortality, is coming from malnutrition. There's not food scarcity here. The World Food Program is distributing food. There's enough food for everyone, yet we're burying on average 3 children a day. Children are dying of acute malnutrition when there's no food shortage. So what's happening here? It's medical malnutrition. What's happening is a child drinks dirty water, or they don't have a latrine, so there's feces everywhere, and so they get little feces on their hands and it gets in their mouth and they get a little infection. And they have some diarrhea and they have some vomiting, and then they don't hold their food, so they lose a little weight. And when they lose weight, their immune system starts to be a little bit depressed. The body is, got less energy, so it functions, essential services only, so the immune system becomes a little depressed. And then you get another infection. And that infection worsens the cycle. You have more vomiting, you have more diarrhea. That leads to more weight loss. That leads to more weakness, which leads to a weaker immune system, which leads to, again, more infection and more malnutrition. That cycle of death can take a child amidst no food scarcity to the end of their life. So we have buried over 200 little bodies since we've arrived here, working in Bentiu, since the events which displaced everyone. And it's absolutely unnecessary, it's preventable. The issue is the water and sanitation here. There are not enough latrines. At this moment, I believe there are about 1 latrine for 75 people. Those latrines are extraordinarily difficult to maintain in any case in current conditions. I believe today some of them are actually collapsing because of the hard rains that we've had. The water, at best, we're looking at maybe 9 or 10 liters per person per day, which is going in here, which is not nearly enough. That's for cooking, washing, and drinking. Imagine 10 liters a day for all of your water-related needs. The rest of the water, of which there's plenty, is actually sewage. The camp is filled with feces and sewage because, again, we have this, we have the underlying problem of being in a swamp where people really shouldn't be forced to live. And then we have the issue that there's just not enough water provision and there's not enough latrines here. So, to get the idea of what this kind of crude mortality means, in my high school, there were 1,000 people. And I remember over the 4 years I went to high school, maybe 3 or 4 people dying over the whole time. Now, if my high school, with 1,000 people, and it was cited today in Bentiu, we'd be seeing 1 person dying every 10 days. Imagine that. And actually, if it was 1 person every 10 days, we would consider that was just at the emergency threshold. Right now, we suspect it's over the emergency threshold. Depending on the week, we measure it above or below that level. In effect, what we've got is a level of mortality which is absolutely shocking and barely imaginable for people who haven't lived in this kind of situation before. And the bulk of who is suffering here, it's the children. It's the weak ones. There's also the people who were sick, people who had various pathologies but were stable because their living conditions were more or less normal. But now, because of the shift in their circumstances, they're exposed, they're cold at night, they're hot during the day, they have dirty water to drink, they don't have latrines. Now they're actually falling below that stability threshold, and they're also dying. So we're also losing adults here. But really, the story is the dying children. Children are dying of malnutrition when there is no food scarcity. And this is something that we're seeing time and again in these kinds of circumstances, and it's something that we have to get a handle on as a humanitarian community and as a human race. It's unacceptable what's happening to the people here in Bentiu. We cannot watch these children die like this. We have to do better, and we can do better. It's a matter of choosing our sites better, preparing our sites better, being ready for the rainy season. If anyone is surprised by the rainy season in South Sudan, then they have not been paying attention in the last 500 years. We have to do better by these people. They're depending on us. And I suppose there are people out there saying, well, South Sudan, they've done it to themselves, it's their own fault. Tell that to the 4-year-old girl who just died in my hospital. This is not the fault of the people that are here, the civilians that have fled this insecurity and are living in this POC and that we're trying to keep alive. So whatever you may feel about the way this, the South Sudanese nation is taking shape, it's not the fault of our patients. So, sorry, I got a little angry about that, but for me it's unacceptable that these children should be suffering this way. Absolutely unacceptable, and it's unnecessary. We can do better. Okay, so we have this mortality, which is resulting from poor water and sanitation conditions, which is causing children to die of malnutrition, even though there's enough food in the camp. So how do we stop that? What's the strategy to keep this malnutrition from bringing down more children? We have to catch it at the front end and the back end. The front end is provision of better water. We need to bring in much more water into this camp. I would say we need to double or triple the amount of clean water which is brought in. Right now, I think we've got something like 250,000 liters a day coming into the camp. We need to push that to 500 or 600. So we're working on treating some surface water with flocculation and chlorination. So ways to make the surface water, which is really, really dirty, make it consumable. We're drilling more boreholes, and UNICEF is actually working hard on getting more boreholes so that we can get clean subsurface water here. We're putting in latrines as quickly as we can, and now that's very difficult. We've seen the rains today, which have caused some latrines to collapse, and it's very difficult to put latrines in this awful, awful swamp. And that's the front end. That's how we prevent this cycle of infection, by stopping children from contracting these infections from dirty water and from poor sanitation and feces laying everywhere. And on the back end, we try to catch them before they go too far down the cycle. We have to have primary health care, so ourselves, Médecins Sans Frontières, MSF, CARE, IRC, and some other actors are doing health care out there in the camp. And the most critical bit is to catch the children before they go too far. When they get a little infection, we have to cure them quickly before they enter that cycle of infection leading to loss of weight leading to weakness and more infection and so forth. We break that cycle if we catch the infections early. And the other thing is to do therapeutic nutrition. So when a child becomes too weak, they can no longer digest normal food. There comes a point where a child can be so malnourished that you could give them an apple and they wouldn't be able to digest it. So we have therapeutic foods. We have specially formulated foods. One's called Plumpy Nut, and we have some others which are therapeutic milks, which can be digested even by someone who's on death's door, whose digestive system is nearly shut down, whose body is almost shutting down. We can bring them back from the brink. So therapeutic nutrition, which is not blanket feeding, it's not giving food to everyone. There is enough food in the camp. It's picking out the children who are weakest and giving them that supplementary food, that super high calorie, very easily digestible food, to bring them out of that cycle before it's too late. So you've seen in our inpatient therapeutic nutrition center where we have these terribly malnourished children who would not survive if they weren't receiving special medical nutrition support. It's medicalized nutrition. It's not just feeding, it's food as medicine. But we also have to catch them earlier in the camp. So that's what we've started doing in the last 10 days, which is going out into the camp. And yesterday we actually went out actively screening, looking through the entire camp for children who are just starting that cycle before it's too late, before it's too far, before it's too difficult to bring them back. We try to get them. So the strategy, again, is stop the infection and the cycle of malnutrition infection at the front end by provision of water and latrines, and then stop it at the back end by providing primary health care, going out in the camps and finding the children and treating them before it's too late. And then we have our hospital where we deal with the most severe cases. And we're working together with the whole humanitarian community here, and there's lots more that needs to be done, but there are an awful lot of people here living in pretty rough conditions and doing the best they can. So obviously we're calling for a little more solidarity and more people to pitch in. For example, I've got a medical team which is working as hard as they can to provide health care for tens of thousands of people. I don't have time to do road maintenance. We don't have time to elevate areas so that we can put our facilities in. So there's a lot of capital here. There's a lot of machinery here. It needs to be put to work. Yes, I understand that the Unimis compound has to be maintained, but we need a little help with all of this stuff that's out here. We need to, we're a bunch of doctors and nurses and bush logisticians. We're not the ones who can do, the heavy-duty road maintenance and raising land and doing all the site infrastructure, particularly in this swamp, that's needed. So I do hope that we can all pull together and all of the, all of the facilities and equipment and capital that's here that can be put to work to really better serve this population. population of a camp. We have done some door-to-door surveys, and the number that we come up with is around 33,500. However, other agencies have done surveys and come up with anywhere between 35 and 45,000 people. If I had to guess, I would say it's probably between 33 and 40,000. But again, it goes up and down depending on the weather, depending on security, depending on when distributions are happening. So the figure that we're using right now, which is based on our door-to-door surveys, is 33,500. But I would not try to contradict anyone else's figures. There are other agencies that have figures that are probably equally credible.